This is video 3 in the introduction to Simio animation, and in this video we'll focus on the use of symbols. And our overview, we'll talk about what a symbol is. We'll demonstrate how to use a symbol from the Simio library. We'll import and download a symbol, and then we'll demonstrate and discuss how to add additional symbols to an object so that you can change an object's appearance as the model is running. So first, what is a symbol? Well, a symbol is what the user sees, or what's shown in the model. So if we look at our standard source server sync model that we developed in the first video in this module, you can see that we have the source object, server object, and the sync object, and the symbol each has a set of symbols. So this is the symbol that's associated with the server from the standard library. This is the symbol that's associated with the source. This is the symbol that's associated with the sync. Similarly, when we have an entity, so we have an entity instance, the green triangle is the default symbol associated with entity. So that's what a symbol is, but we can also add our own symbols or modify the symbols from to the objects from the standard library. And so we view all project symbols within the project window. So this is something that's often confuses new users. So if you go to the project right here, you can see we have a symbols option right here. And so we don't have, in this standard model, we don't have any symbols that we've created, but we'll do that here in just a second. So Simio has a set of default symbols, or has a symbol library, which we'll see in just a second. We can also export a symbol from one project and use it within another Simio project. So if you have a custom symbol that you want to use across multiple models, we can do that. We can also download symbols from Trimble 3D Warehouse. Again, we're going to demonstrate that here in just a second. And we can import files from various formats. We can also create symbols by actually drawing them in Simio itself. So for example, if I go to my project and go to symbols, there's an option here to create a new symbol. So it comes up with the Simio, standard Simio window, and I can use any of the drawing tools. Let's see, let me grab a rectangle here, and let's just draw a little rectangle like that, and that's going to be our symbol. And so now if we look in our symbol library, we have just created a symbol. Okay, so how do we apply these symbols? We have apply symbol option, so we can select an object and then we can go through the library, which has options to filter by different categories. So let's take a look at that. So if we go back to the model, for example, perhaps I want the server to have a different symbol. So I'm going to go up here to the apply symbol, and let's say that I am modeling. You can see that there are various categories. We have buildings, containers, equipment. Let's say that this is a press. And so now when I apply the symbol, I can jump into 3D mode and see that these symbols are actually three-dimensional. Most of the symbols are three-dimensional objects. And so again, as with the other things in Simio, this is to scale. And so you can set the scale that you want to make your symbol match the scale of the drawing. So you make it bigger, smaller, move it, and so on. We can also apply symbols to entities. So if I want to have entities moving through, I can apply a symbol, and there are again a variety of symbols that we can use. We have a pretty robust set of people, so it doesn't make much sense for people to go through the press, but I could apply that person like that. And then when I execute the model, you can see that the symbol, the person symbol that I applied to the entity shows up. We can also have animated symbols, so there's also a set of animated people. So if you scroll down and look for animated, let's look at this particular one, animated female child, and now when you run the model, when the entity is moving, you actually see the animation of the animation of the movement. So you have a lot of options that you can do for that type of animated animated symbols. One note, however, that I bring up is that when you apply a walking person or an animated person, the models get quite big. So I'm going to go back and undo that, and we could apply the symbol that we just created if we want, or we could go in and have a non-animated or non-walking person in this case. We also have the option to import a symbol, and Simio will import from a whole variety of formats, including SketchUp files and AutoCAD files, some standard image files. And so I have one example here that I downloaded, and so let's go over here and go back to our standard SS model, the model here, and I'm going to import the symbol from my computer. So I downloaded this earlier. This is layout.png, so it's just a ping file that shows a shop layout. So when you see this, Simio gives you the forward direction so that you can orient the image the way that it matches for the model. So in this case I need to rotate 90 degrees in the negative direction. So if I just do that, now this is the forward direction for the model. The other thing I want to specify is the size. So in this case I have a shop floor, and the import size says it's 10 meters by 7.3. That's probably a little bit small. So let's assume that we have a building that's, say, 40 meters. So I can put that those dimensions in and then import the model. Okay, and now I have my layout as in my symbol library. If I go back to my model now, let's see here, let me scroll back here, go back to my model, let me zoom out just a little bit, and now I can place the model or place the symbol by just going to the drawing tab, place symbol, and the one I want to do is the one I just created or imported, layout. And so we can now put the model down or put the image down. And so now if we imported it to scale, this would be the scaled version of, in this case, our shop floor. One other little trick when we use this kind of import, one thing that's good to do is sort of jump in 3D mode, hold down the shift key, drop it down just a little bit so it gets to a negative Y direction, so everything else will sit on top of it. I can then go and do the lock edits, and when I lock the edits it lets me build the model around here. So in this case what I might want to do is say, okay, here's where let's grab the source, and the server might represent my stripping machine, for example, and then I have my exit here. I guess I have my entrance and my exit backwards. So let me move my source over here. And so now we can use this type of symbol to represent the layout of the system that you're actually modeling. So in this case I used the symbol to model a static part of the layout, but I could have, now that I have it in the symbol library, I could just as easily use the same process to animate the model entity or animate the source or the sink, or really anything else that that has a Simio that has a symbol. Next, what we can do is we can demonstrate how we can download symbols, and we're going to download from something called the 3D Warehouse, Trimble 3D Warehouse, and there are lots and lots of symbols that people upload. So let's say that I want to go and I'm not satisfied with this symbol that I have for server 1. I think I did some kind of press. So I can go into the server and go and say go to 3D Warehouse, and what that's going to do is going to take me to the Trimble 3D Warehouse website. Then from here I can search for the symbol. So let's say I want to do a drill press, so I'm just going to search for drill press, see what it comes up with. And so now we have all of these options for drill presses. So let's take a look at this one. I just randomly pick this one. And so I look at this and say, well, this is looks like a hand drill with a drill press. So I want to download that 3D model, and let's download it as SketchUp 2018. I want to download, and so this time I'm going to save this in download. So we're going to call this drill press. And so I just downloaded this as a SketchUp file. I can then jump back into Simio once that completes its download. Now that I have it downloaded to my computer, I can go through the same import process that we did before. So I'm going to go to import symbol, and I want to import drill press. And so we're going to get the same dialog box that we saw before, where it goes in and looks at the file and tries to determine sizing and so on for the file. And so now looks like we had two separate views of the drill press in this one, and you can see compared to the human these are pretty small, so the sizing doesn't look to be correctly incorporated into this particular model, but I can easily fix that if I know the size. Looks like the length is for both of the drill presses, so let's just fix this and assume that that we're going to have these be 2 meters apart, for example. That's probably need a little more. Let's do more like 4, and so now we can see these relative to the person. Again, I can put it in 3D mode if I want to see what the 3D view is. Now that looks a little bit big. Drill press isn't usually that big. So let's move that down to, 17, not what I wanted, to 1. And 1.5. Yeah, that's probably close to right. And as you can see, you can spend a long time trying to get all of these symbols to look perfect. And so now in 3D mode, you can see that we've just applied the symbol that we downloaded from Trimble 3D Warehouse. And so as I mentioned before, Trimble 3D Warehouse has millions and millions of 3D images, and so you can generally find something that fits in with the system that you're trying to model. The last thing we'll do in this video is to look at how we can add additional symbols to an object so that we can change the object's appearance as the model runs. So note I switched back to the initial source server sync model that I had. I got rid of some of the symbol stuff that we just did. And suppose what I want to have happen is I want the default entity to start out in its normal default green color, and when it enters server 1 I want it to change red, and when it leaves server 1 I want to change it to blue. So what I need to do in order to do that is I need to choose my object, and then there's an option called additional symbols. And so what I need to do is add 2 additional symbols so I can have my default green one, my red one, my blue one. So you can see after I click this twice, I now have active symbol 3 of 3. If you just click that down arrow, you can see our three symbols. And so we'll start out with symbol 0, which is the default green. So symbol 1, I want to change it to red. So I can now, the active symbol is symbol 2, so now I can just choose my color red and make that red. Then I'm going to change my symbol to symbol 2 and change it to blue. So we'll just use the dark blue there. And so now I have my 3 symbols, 1 green, 1 red, 1 blue. And so before we talk about how we can use the different symbols, one thing to note is that in Simio the symbol list is 0 based. So the first symbol is not symbol 1, it's actually symbol 0, and that becomes important when you're trying to switch the symbol as the model runs. Okay, so now if we go to our entity and we look over here at the properties, the animation properties, we can see this is what controls the symbol that's used in the actual animation. And so one thing that we can do is we can use a random symbol. So now that I have my 3 symbols, if I set this property to true, then Simio is simply going to pick randomly between my 3 symbols. So they're picked a blue one, a red one, a red one, a blue one, a green one, and so it's going to pick these with equal probability. So that's one thing that I can do, and random symbols are good in situations, say I'm modeling people and I want to have a different population, some children, some adults, males, females. We can then randomly choose a symbol and you'll get a good mix of people symbols. But what we want to do in this case is we want to go through the symbols based on where the entity is in the process. We said we wanted to start it out green, when it enters server 1 turn red, and when it leaves server 1 turn blue. So what we need to do is look at the current symbol properly. Let me make this a little bigger so that we can read that. The current symbol index. And this current symbol index tells Simio how do you want to choose the symbol from the symbol list. And so you can see the default here is to use the model entity.picture. So this is an entity state called picture. So if I go over to my model entity, definitions, states, here's my picture state, and you can see this was defined for me automatically, and it has an initial value of 0. And so that's why in this model, without doing anything else, the symbol index is always 0, and so the entity will always be modeled, or will always use that 0th, the first symbol, which is actually symbol 0, in the symbol list. So what I want to do is change it based on the time in the server. So I'm going to go to my server object and I'm going to do a quick state assignment here. We haven't really covered state assignment, so just bear with me for a second. and we want to do the on entering, and so this is where we want to change the symbol to red. So I'm going to just simply go and say change model entity dot picture to 1. And so now when the entity enters the server, it changes to red. So it stays red in the input buffer and so on. And so we did that again by just setting the value for picture to say go from the 0th element of the list to the first element. And so of course to finalize what we said we wanted to do, let me close that window here, I didn't mean to do that, is we want, when the entity leaves, we want it to go blue. So now on when the entity exits the server, I need to change that model entity.picture to the value 2. Model entity picture to a value of 2. And so now when I run, you'll see that we will go through all 3 symbols in our list. Starts out green, jumps to red during processing, and then changes to blue when it leaves. And so once again, we did that by using the symbol list for the entity, and we can have as many items or as many entrants as we want in the symbol list. If I want something more complex, it's very easy to do that. So in that example, we had the symbol list for an entity, but if we watch the model run, you can see also the default behavior of a server is the color changes based on whether it's processing or not. So this regular gray means it's idle, and then when it's processing, you see the green color. And if we had failures, you would see different color and so on. And so that's also done with the symbol list. So if I go to the server and then look up, you can see that we have active symbol 1 of 9. So there are actually 9 symbols in the symbol list. And here's how you can see where that animation is automatically changing. So when the server's not processing, it's idle. It's gray. When it's processing, it's green. If we had blocked and failed and off shift and so on, other states of the server, the colors would change accordingly. And so when we go look at server 1 and then look at the properties for the animation, we have current symbol index. So we had model entity.picture when we wanted the entity change. This is simply done with server.resource state, which is a numerical value that we use for the index. And so that gets a little bit more involved than we want to get in this video, but once again, its mechanism is the exact same as with changing the entity symbol. We just simply change the symbol when we want the server object to adjust based on its current state. That's all we're going to cover in this video, but as you can see, the use of symbols is integral to Simio, particularly to make the animations informative and to look good. And so this is something you should definitely experiment with. Go search around Trimble 3D Warehouse, maybe download SketchUp, create your own 3D image and so on, and just familiarize the use of symbols to enhance the animation.